meditating today on the subject of gladness, and we've actually already begun the meditations on the topic of gladness. So we started off, and I'm sharing this for the benefit of anyone who might have joined a little bit later, but we started off by acknowledging that the light is always asking a question of each of us. And so the light is always asking a question. I'll share with you the way this question is asked in one way that this question is asked. So Lazarus was raised from the dead by Jesus. And the eyes of Jesus, as they looked into the eyes of Lazarus, asked a silent question. And Lazarus said, yes. And he walked forward into the realm of time and space. And so for each of us, the eyes of Jesus, if you resonate with that particular teacher, are asking each of us a silent question. If you want, you can also connect with a teacher like the Buddha, the one who is awake. You can connect with a teacher like Moses or a divine being like Miriam. Anyone that you connect with, allow yourself to open to their eyes, and the grace, the wisdom, the love, the caring that looks through their eyes at you reaches all the way down into the molten core of love and light that is your true eternal nature. And it asks you a question. And for each of us, we are invited to say yes. We are invited to say yes. And then, another way to say this is, life itself asks a question of each of us. So all of life, like right now, these incredibly precious lilies are here, just blooming with pure love and showing what is possible for each of us. And so this energy of the flower, this energy that allows the flower to rise into the light and allows the flower to have the courage to open its entire being to the light. That same energy is rising up through us. And it is asking each of us to open our heart, our mind, our awareness, our life, and to say yes, and to step forward. And then there are all the people on the planet, the ones that humanly it's so sweet and easy and innocent and simple to love and to connect with and to see the light in them. And then the ones who give wonderful opportunity to expand in unconditional love, sharing through each of us. All embracing pure love asks to share through each of us with all of the people. And each of us is invited to say yes. And so just allow your being to open, and allow your being to open to the awareness that this is possible thanks to divine strength within us. This is possible thanks to divine courage within us. This is possible thanks to divine love and wisdom and understanding within us. If we look at this on a human level, we'll give up, right? We'll pull the pillow over our head and we'll say, no, I'm not coming forth. I'm going to stay in the tomb. Even if the boulder rolls away from the tomb, I'm not coming forth. I can't stand to stand in the light as much as the light would like me to stand in the light. And so it's the divine in us that when the stone rolls away from the tomb allows us to step forward into the light. It's the divine in us that allows us to open to the light as many times as it takes, hundreds of times, thousands of times across a lifetime, opening to receive forgiveness and also opening to extend and to share forgiveness. One thing is for sure, if we live in the midst of other humans, forgiveness will be involved. So we will have occasion to receive forgiveness, and we will also have occasion to extend forgiveness. And so we're inviting ourselves to engage in this as part of a divine dance, part of the process of being here, part of the process of allowing the light to share through us, to shine through us, to roll the stone away from the tomb, so that we, each of us, again and again and again, thousands of times a day, anytime we want to give way to doubt or limitation or loss or lack or fear or the illusion of separateness, thousands of times a day, the stone rolls away from the tomb, and we are invited to step forward. And so I will share with you a couple of scriptures. Let's first join together offering in our heart the prayer that I say aloud for all. I offer my reverence and salutations unto God, Christ, gurus, to all deities, all gods, all sages, all savants, all lovers of God of all times and all lands. To you all I bow in my soul. You are all manifestations of the one infinite spirit, omniscient, omnipresent, all blissful reality. To you all I pray. Inspire me with the blessing of wisdom. Awaken me to the realization of immortality and bliss, that I may realize I am the absolute self. Amen. So we're meditating on gladness, and we've already begun these meditations, and I'll share with you some scriptures which will be familiar, and listen as if listening for the first time, reminding ourselves that we are invited for this to happen, not just once a year, and not just for a season, but daily and momently. Every time it seems that we are enclosed in a tomb, anytime it seems that we are enclosed in darkness, anytime it seems that fear or limitation or anguish or sadness or shock or betrayal or pain separates us from the light in ourselves and from the light in other humans, we're invited to let the stone roll away from the tomb. So this is from Matthew. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was white like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell the disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell the disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." And then this is from John. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. And then one more appearance, also from John. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw 2 angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. And so when you meditate on each of these scriptures, this is an invitation for each of us to allow the stone to roll away from the tomb and to allow ourselves to step forward from the appearance of darkness into the light, allowing ourselves to say yes to life, allowing ourselves to say yes to what appears to be impossible from a human perspective. Nothing is impossible to the divine. Nothing is impossible to the energy of love. So what we can do is say yes. And I'll share with you a couple of stories that are examples of this. So one comes from a play by Eugene O'Neill. This play makes me smile. It was written in 1925, and it's called Lazarus Laughed. And it's almost never been produced. You'll understand why in one second. So when the Pasadena Community Playhouse produced it, it took 151 actors to produce it, playing 450 parts. And so one of the things that he's interested in doing in this play is tracing the effect that one individual has on hundreds of people. And so here's the opening of the play. Lazarus has just been raised from the dead. The first 3 words that Lazarus speaks in the play are yes, yes, and yes. And he says yes on 3 levels in 3 ways. And so we've been meditating on this since we started meditating this morning. But the eyes of Jesus look at the eyes of Lazarus right after Lazarus is raised from the dead. And that's the first time that Lazarus says yes. So each of us is invited to be resurrected, to live again, to allow ourselves to be freshly lifted into life. And the divine is looking into the eyes of each of us and is asking us to say yes. The divine cannot make this happen. The divine asks us, are you ready? Are you willing? Are you able? Will you say yes to allow all of this light, all of this life to be born in you, and all of this light to share and to shine through you? The second time Lazarus says yes, the crowd, which knows that he's been dead and now he's not dead anymore, they're standing outside of his room and he's sort of glowing. He's also, by the way, the only character not wearing a mask. So until we let go of the fear of death, we're wearing a mask of separateness. And Lazarus, because he's let go of the fear of death, his mask is gone, and you can see his true self. You can see his true face. And so he's shining, and the crowd outside of his dwelling place is yelling, "Come forth! Come forth! Come forth!" And Lazarus says, with gladness and with resounding assent, "Yes." And that's an invitation. Life itself is asking each of us to come forth. Life itself is asking each of us to not hold ourselves back or separate or apart. Life itself is asking each of us to say, yes, I step forward into the light. In the midst of all of these other people, I step forward into the light. And the third time that Lazarus says yes in this play, he looks around at the faces, all of the faces. They're all masked, but he's looking around at all of the faces, and with universal love, with all-embracing kindness and understanding and awareness, looking at all of the other humans, looking at all of the people, he says, yes. And that's what we're asked to do also. We're asked to say yes to, can I love, not in the abstract, not in my meditation cave, but in the midst of other humans, can I say yes? And so I was smiling to myself. Yogananda, there was an aspect of Yogananda that wanted to run away to a meditation cave. It never worked, right? Thank God. That's why we're here, because it never worked. But there were times when he wanted to run away to the mountains, and he wanted to just kind of sequester himself away and seclude himself and isolate himself in the mountains and the Himalayas and meditate. And he always ended up coming back to his teacher. And his teacher said, your work is here. Your work is here. Your work is here. And this is the charge that Sri Yukteswar said to Yogananda, but it's for each of us. Your task is to learn to find love in the midst of other people, not from other people. So look at the phrasing. The phrasing there is really important. Not asking other people to give you that connection to love. Love is in you. Love is with you. Find that connection to love in you, and then you'll find it in the midst of other people. And you'll have the spiritual courage and the spiritual strength to do this 80,000 times. Knowing, and I'll connect back to a couple of teachings that we were meditating on last week. So Maya Angelou says, courage is required if we want to be kind. Anybody can be kind now and then, when it's easy, when it's convenient. Only if courage is present can we be constantly kind. And she also says, which makes me smile, at the end of the day, you look back over your day and you might say, oh, I messed up 80 times. So then the next day, you strive to do even a little bit more of the expressing of kindness right in the midst of other human beings. And so that teaching from Maya Angelou, it's the same teaching that Jesus says. So Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you. And he also says, if you love the people who love you, that doesn't make you my student. He says, what makes you my student is if you love those who revile you. That's a hard ask. To be a student of Jesus means loving those who revile you. And so what this requires, and I've said this already, but I'm inviting us to put this into practice, it requires forgiveness. So it requires that when the stone rolls away from the tomb, we step into the light, we stand in the light, and we say to the light, Divine Grace, I will open every level and layer of my being. I will allow the light to penetrate every level and layer of my being so that I see all of myself. I see all of the places where I have been good and generous and kind and sweet and harmonious and beautiful. And I also see everywhere I have caused pain to another. And that other is myself. So if I love another, I am sharing that love directly with myself. If I cause harm to another, I am causing that harm directly to myself. And so it takes so much love. And that's why opening to the energy of divine grace is absolutely vital. Opening to the energy of divine grace is what allows us to be the butterfly that bursts forward from the chrysalis. Opening to divine grace is what allows us to say and to mean and to live, I extend forgiveness to myself. across my past, present, and future. I extend forgiveness to anyone who has caused me harm or pain across my past, present, or future. I extend forgiveness and grace to all lifetimes, past, present, and future. So the light stands with us as we open to the light, and it allows this forgiveness to be possible. So I also came across, this is a true story from 2018. I came across it on Friday, but it happened in 2018. The living out of this will open our hearts and also break our hearts, and then allow more love to share through our hearts as we live out this practice. And so the story starts with, true story, the story starts with a 17-year-old boy who walks into an animal shelter. We'll see if I can tell this one without crying. He walks into an animal shelter with his dog, and he says, "I can't feed her, can you feed her?" And his dog is wrapping itself around his legs. His dog does not want to leave him. And the animal shelter says, "We're full. We don't have any room for your dog." And he says, "Please, I can't feed her." And they say, "Well, what happened?" And he says, "Well, I used to live in a tent under the bridge, but she got out of the tent, and now I don't have the tent anymore, and I can't feed my dog." And they said, "Okay, we'll take your dog." And so I'm just inviting you to connect with that energy of pure love expressed by the 17-year-old for the dog, and by the dog for the 17-year-old, wrapping herself around his legs. And then after he left, there's a picture of her sort of lying flat out on the floor, looking completely bereft. Connect with that energy of pure love, which allowed him to ask for help for his dog. He wasn't able to ask for help for himself, but that energy of pure love that he felt for his dog, he walked all the way from the bridge with his dog to the animal shelter, seeking help. So the animal shelter put this online. They said the 17-year-old who's been living under this bridge came and surrendered his dog because he lost his tent and he doesn't have enough to feed her. And so then that energy of pure love, which that boy was able to connect with in relation to his dog, brought forth more pure love. And so offers of housing, offers of food, offers of support came pouring in. And in fact, the 17-year-old boy's mom reached out, and she said, "He ran away a year ago. He's also welcome to come back home." And so just connect with that energy of pure love, just the purity, the innocence of that love of the boy for his dog, which allowed him to reach beyond the fear, which allowed him to ask for help for her, even though he couldn't ask for help for himself. That connected him back to human community. That connected him back to human sisters and brothers. So a couple of things to point out here. Who is that boy who's living under the bridge? It's me. It's you. It's every human who feels separate, who feels not loved, who feels like, I don't belong, I'm not safe, I don't know how to ask for help. I feel starving, not just for food and shelter, but for caring and for a feeling of safety, for a feeling of belonging. That's me. That is in me. That is in every human on the planet. And it's in everyone that we look upon. So when we look out across our lives or across the world, and we see humans who are not being that pure love, it's because they feel like they're living under a bridge. And they feel terrified. They feel so sad. They feel so lonely. And that's why they're acting out in the way that they're acting out. And so the answer is more of that pure love. And this is the love. Each of us is able to share that love because we have been loved in that way. We are loved in that way. And so the energy of the lilies make that love visible. The energy that we connect with every time we meditate, make that love visible. The energy we connect with every time we hug one another or smile, make that love visible. So a couple of things just to observe. That boy living under the bridge, it's me. It's you, it's every human that feels cut off, that is dealing with a feeling of separateness, a feeling of isolation, a feeling of pain. The other thing just to observe is it takes a while to reintegrate that boy back into human connection and human community. And so that's me needing to be patient with myself as I learn to say yes to loving all humans. It's going to take a while, if I've been living under a bridge for a year, for me to trust myself to say yes and open my heart. It's going to take a while for me to get rid of the pain and the fear and the isolation and the cold and the hunger that I felt living in that tent and living not even in a tent under that bridge. And so be patient, be kind, keep reaching out that embrace of love. And as we do that for ourselves, we're also able to do that for everyone whom we encounter. And so what the divine wants, and I'm coming back to the play from Eugene O'Neill for a second, what the divine wants is to share with us, to share with that boy, to share with every human on the planet. This is what Lazarus tells everyone. There is no death. There is only life. And Lazarus laughs. He laughs. He laughs a contagious laugh. A laugh that is the energy of joy. It's the energy of community. It's the energy of forgiveness. It's the energy of affection. It is fearless. And because it is fearless, that light within Lazarus, that laughter within Lazarus, it spreads. And so as Lazarus laughs, everyone else laughs at the same time. And so each of us is invited to connect with that energy of love, which allows us to move beyond the fear. One of the questions Lazarus keeps asking is, why do you look at one another with suspicion in your eyes? So he's calling out that kind of human fear and the human judgment and the human sort of wariness about allowing ourselves to trust, allowing ourselves to love. And so again, come back to that divine strength, come back to that divine courage, come back to that divine kindness, come back to, as we cultivate our connectedness with the light, as we cultivate our connectedness with pure love, as we welcome ourselves back into community from where we have been living under the bridge, we're able to reach out a hand of welcome to everyone that we encounter. And from what I have seen, there is no human in embodiment who has not lived under a bridge. It takes different forms. Everyone needs that hand of welcome. Everyone needs the silent, smiling, all-embracing energy of kindness and connection, caring, hospitality, generosity, respect, appreciation. Just that energy of, I see you, I notice you, you're here, it's amazing to be here. What would it be like if we all gave ourselves permission to let the stone roll away from the tomb when life says, come forth, come forth, come forth? We said, yes, I will. When life asks us to love with all-embracing love, all of the people, all of them, we say, yes. And when life asks us to love ourselves, and when life asks us to love the divine, we say, yes. Thank God, and God bless us all.